Hello guys, what is going on? Son of Chelsea back here again for another edition of Let's Talk Chelsea, breaking down the latest Chelsea news on a regular basis. Hope you're doing well and keeping safe on this Saturday. In today's news video, I'm going to be speaking about Thomas Tuchel's first interview in pre-season, some really interesting quotes on a variety of things. Erling Haaland is a big bid from Chelsea about to go in. Conor Gallagher, a potential Premier League loan for him once again, and Callum Hudson-Odoi, who apparently has started pre-season really well. But before we get into any of that good stuff today, I want to ask you guys, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and a notification bell so you don't miss any of the uploads on the channel as we get closer to the start of Chelsea's 21-22 season. Going to have my review of the Bournemouth game on Tuesday, the Arsenal friendly, the Tottenham friendly, and of course the Super Cup on the 11th of August before that massive opening Premier League game against Crystal Palace. So subscribe, hit that notification bell, hit the like button because it helps more people find the channel, and it'd be amazing to hit 25k subs before we get going this season. So great if you could help out on that as well if you haven't subscribed. But let's get into Thomas Tuchel's first interview. I have to say that I haven't missed, for months, I've enjoyed this pre-season and sort of off-season actually. I enjoyed watching the Euros, obviously covering England on the channel, seeing how far they went. But in terms of Chelsea games, I haven't missed them as much as maybe some other people. I just savoured that Champions League triumph and I haven't missed the intensity of games. But one thing I have missed pretty much since the last one is Thomas Tuchel press conferences, because I think they're always interesting, always enlightening, and he really gave some good quotes here. Listen to the full interview with Lee Parker, the Chelsea TV interviewer, down in the description box below, the link there. I believe there's a second part coming out as well, but some really interesting quotes that we can dive into here. This is what he had to say. I've had some phone calls with Marina and Peta, all in a relaxed way. There's no need for stress and no need to rush things. I have a big smile on my face because this group is doing so well. I always look for attitude. If we hire, we want to hire for attitude. What I really love is they're so positive. Of course, we look very carefully at the current players. The team set the bar high. It's what we demand for ourselves. There were some other quotes about what he's been doing during his holidays, sort of personal stuff, but as well, maybe some of those fringe players potentially breaking in, and maybe the idea that we could see some surprise players at the start of the season, the likes of Ruben Loftus-Cheek, players that you expect to go out on loan but may actually stay with the first team squad. So that's something we're going to discover, I think, as we get closer to the start of the season, because it's not that far away now. And I think as we get into the Bournemouth pre-season friendly, we get into the Arsenal and Tottenham ones. Do you consider the Super Cup a pre-season friendly sort of a warm-up, obviously, to the Premier League? I know a lot of people don't. A lot of people want to win the Super Cup this year because Chelsea have failed to do so in recent seasons. That is a slight concern for me in terms of the lack of pre-season games we have this year. I've seen previous years, the 15-16 one, the 17-18 pre-season, where we had less than 5 games and we went into the season undercooked. That is a slight concern when we have a lot of players returning from the Euros and those fitness issues. You know, you've got to trust Thomas Tuchel. There is also that slight concern of new arrivals. Are they going to come in? Can they be ready for the start of the new season if we do make big signings? But I'm just really curious to see what the team looks like on Tuesday. If some of those fringe players that we've heard have been doing really good things in pre-season so far, can they perform? Because it's the first time we're actually going to see the first team in a pre-season game. Not all of them, but we know some of those German players are going to be returning soon as well. So hopefully they'll be integrated in the coming games too. But let's get into some transfer stuff. Erling Haaland. There's been some rumours and speculation in recent days that a potential bid could be going in from Chelsea. Now, I know a lot of you are going to roll your eyes when I say that, because it feels like we've been hearing that for a very long time. What I would say, though, is just based on the timing of how close we get to the Premier League season, you feel like something sort of has to give in the coming weeks in terms of, are Chelsea actually going to make these moves happen? I think that it's a case of, if in 2 weeks we're still in the same position, I'd probably be in a place to say I'm not quite sure if these big deals, especially for Haaland, are going to go through. Chelsea, as we know, work in silence. But I think if Chelsea are going to bid for Haaland, there's probably just based on the history, and this is not ITK information, it's just based on what I've seen over the years and listened to people who know a lot about Chelsea transfers and the way we operate, even though it is very much in secret. If Chelsea are going to bid that much for a player, there's confidence they can get the deal over the line. So we spoke about Lukaku the other day. I think that's a brilliant option. Erling Haaland, I've consistently said it would be the most ridiculous transfer, but trust me, it would be an incredible transfer. It is the one thing I think we need to really take us to the next level if we want to compete for the Premier League title next season. If that is the true ambition of Chelsea, if that's what the hierarchy believe we need to be doing next year under Thomas Tuchel, and the platform is there to do it, then Haaland or Lukaku, one of those two for me takes us to the next level. I know Jan Argafortoft, who of course has a lot of connection to Erling Haaland, was speaking last week about how Erling Haaland was back in Dortmund training. Conflicting reports about an offer rejected. This was earlier, I believe, last week or last weekend, I think it was. Like I have said all along, only a big offer can change the game. Quite similar to Sancho last summer. No offer came, Sancho stayed. So if Chelsea are preparing an offer, potentially like with the Kai Havertz deal, how big that was, if they're going to go in to get him, they believe they can get him, and potentially, as we've heard from reports from the likes of Matt Law in recent months, potentially personal terms are not going to be an issue with Erling Haaland, and he would be open to moving. So fingers crossed something does happen, because I know how frustrated people are. But as I stressed earlier in the week, these deals are so big for the club. And I think obviously people reading a lot into Tuchel's words about having phone calls with Marina and Peta and potential movement in the transfer window. So let's hope something changes as we get closer to kickoff against Crystal Palace. Let's move on to some other Chelsea news here. Conor Gallagher, Sam Ingersoll from Football London reporting that Conor Gallagher has held talks with Crystal Palace and Leeds over a potential loan move this season. I think it makes a lot of sense for Gallagher to keep his options open, and I think there's a few players across the team that probably fall into the same category. Tino Andrin is another one. We have so many midfielders. At the moment, these players are getting a look in because the likes of Kai Havertz, Jorginho, Mateo Kovacic, I don't think is back yet. We know obviously Mason Mount is a big player. It's kind of when you look at the formation, at the moment, if we stick to the current formation, then for a lot of those midfielders, there's probably only going to be 1 or 2 spots available in the first team. If Tuchel was to change to maybe a 4-3-3, then I think space obviously opens up there. So maybe a Gallagher could find his way into the first team squad if he was willing to be more of a backup player this year. But we have seen, of course, with the youth exodus in recent days, young players maybe are not in the same sort of mindset to go on the loan cycle. But I believe that Conor Gallagher, he had a decent loan spell. West Brom, obviously, they got relegated, but I think for his own personal development, it was a big year for him to play Premier League football pretty consistently. Going to a Leeds or a Crystal Palace, especially Palace with their rebuild under Patrick Vieira, obviously just signing Mark Guehi, but some of the players they've brought in, I think that'd be a really good loan personally for him over a season. You just want to get him into a team, I think a little bit like Billy Gilmore, who hopefully are going to be a little bit more progressive, where he can get on the ball a lot. I think maybe the problem with West Brom last year, very reactive and kind of aggressive team, especially under Sam Allardyce, where he didn't get a lot of time on the ball. If he can go to a middle tier team, maybe, Leeds, or maybe just above that to a Southampton potentially, if that could be a possibility, where he is going to get time on the ball to express himself. But we saw with Ruben Loftus-Cheek going to Crystal Palace, how big that was for his development, getting that year. So just because maybe they go to a team that isn't deemed one of the best in the league and maybe struggling in the opening months of the season, doesn't mean they can't have a positive impact, and doesn't mean that year on loan isn't going to be really beneficial, that they can come back to Chelsea and make an impact. So Conor Gallagher, I'd still say it's quite likely he'll go on loan, but we'll have to see in the coming weeks if he makes a real good impression on Thomas Tuchel, and that means he stays for the upcoming season in Chelsea's midfield options. Finally, I want to speak about Callum Hudson-Odoi, because there's been a lot of excitement in recent days about him, and basically since pre-season has got going, how he's impacted and how insiders like Adam Newson, who's been covering a lot about pre-season, he looks sharp, he looks fit, he looks ready to go. A clip was released of the the squad preseason game that they did. Obviously, the preseason friendly with a local Irish team, Drogheda, was cancelled. So instead, they had a sort of a squad game, and it ended 1-1. Callum Hudson-Odoi scoring 1 goal, Armando Broja scoring the other. Callum Hudson-Odoi's goal I did see, and it looked like kind of the Callum pre his injury. Fearless running at the defence, cutting inside and drilling a shot with his right foot into the bottom corner. I said last week on Let's Talk Chelsea, he needs more time at left wing. We need to see him more in that position. I think that's where he can thrive. There's a general consensus at the moment that Callum needs to get those minutes at left wing, because it's where he spent a lot of his time in the academy, and performances like against Everton back in March and other performances we've seen shows that is a position where he can thrive, where he really hasn't had the chance to so far in his Chelsea career. The big question mark is with Timo Werner, with Christian Pulisic. We know Mason can play there. If, for instance, we brought in a new striker and Mason and Kai are playing behind, say, an Erling Haaland, that could impact Cho's minutes. Even though he isn't a striker, there's going to be a knock-on effect with bringing another attacker in, absolutely. But it's great to see with Callum. I think people still underestimate the impact of that injury, despite the fact he came back pretty quickly from it in a few months. That injury, he still says, was knocking him back. So it's great to see he's had some time off. He's recalibrated, I think, got a lot of energy back into him, and really looks to be taking the opportunity, because I think probably he sees, like a lot of the other players who've returned early and weren't at the Euros, that this is their opportunity to get in front of those players who may have some fitness issues, to maybe get into that Super Cup starting 11 and start the season off strongly in front of Thomas Tuchel. So I believe that Callum Hudson-Odoi absolutely has that chance to start the season for Chelsea. Whether he can maintain that over a season is going to be the big question, but it definitely is a big season for Callum Hudson-Odoi's development. So I'd say watch out for Callum Hudson-Odoi. He could potentially be one of those players that at the start of the year we're not really certain about what he's going to do in the team, but this could be his big breakout year for Chelsea, absolutely. But that is it for this edition of Let's Talk Chelsea. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to watch it. If you did enjoy it, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you don't miss any of the uploads on the channel. Follow me on Twitter at SonOfChelsea. Have a great day, and I'll see you again.